Hello, hello. Is everybody hearing me okay? Okay, are you guys hearing me okay? Anybody? Okay, perfect. Is there a lot of background noise as well? Okay, because my meters are sort of spiking off the charts here for some particular reason. And I'm hearing a lot of hiss myself, so that's a little strange. Okay. Okay, so we got most people here. Still waiting on 2. Okay, looks like we're just waiting on Evan. Do you guys know if George or Amber are still participating? Have they? Have they been in any of your other classes? Right. Okay. It's kind of what I was expecting. I can't say I blame them. That's got to be really hard to try to do that at the same time as go to school. So, but I wish they were here. Anyhow. Okay. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys are all doing okay. As you can see, we've got a little bit different setup here today. We're going to be, for those of you in the commercial class, we're going to be taking pictures of my kitchen, which is right over there. And yeah, so I had to move all the stuff inside to do that. And so, yeah, I couldn't really do all that in an hour. So I had to do that over yesterday and today to both clean up my kitchen so it's immaculate for the first time since I moved in. And that was 10 years ago. And the get all the streaming stuff, and so I can do this here. Speaking of which, I should probably be recording this, even though I post the recording from YouTube, which is way better quality. And let me see here. Can I spotlight myself? Okay, it doesn't help me any. I still see myself just a tiny little piece in my corner. But anyhow, theoretically, IT is, or Microsoft is working on a feature that this will record full screen onto stream, just whatever is spotlighted. But that's why we're still doing it to YouTube. So if you miss anything or you need anything, just go back to the YouTube link that I post and check out that video if you need to hear something again. If you need to take a bathroom break or go get a drink or whatever it is, and you think you missed something important, then feel free to ask, of course. But yeah, so I wanted to first start out today talking about some of the stuff that I've been doing, and I got joined by Mike at my last assignment, so that was kind of cool. Probably got better pictures than me. And the one question I actually had for you, Mike, was did you get harassed as much about being fake news as I did? Okay. And did you accept? Yeah. Rebel News is the king for those people, I guess. So we were at the anti-mask protest in Elmer, which seems to be coming to a city near you soon. It's coming to my town next weekend, which is not very far from Elmer, of course, in St. Thomas. But yeah, it was a bit of an interesting time. I haven't actually seen any of your pictures, Mike, yet. Did you happen to submit those for the assignment, or did? Okay, well, we'll have to take a look at those. But I haven't downloaded any of those assignments because several people needed a day or two more or whatever it was. So I realize that there's not a whole lot that's going on these days. And if you're struggling, just let me know and we'll figure something out. I'm really big on deadlines, but I totally understand that this is a different situation. So I don't want you to feel like I'm really crushing you hard on those deadlines and stuff. but know that they are really, really important if you want to do this in the business world. Here we've got a bit of a different situation, being that, well, there's not a whole lot of events to cover, and it's not always necessarily totally safe to do so. Both Mike and I were wearing masks at this the protest, but you could pretty much tell who was media by who was wearing a mask there. But yeah, it was it's a difficult situation anyhow, just to get out and find something to do. So keep that conversation open, and if you're having trouble finding something for this or the last couple assignments, just let me know. I'm not going to be a hard ass about it, as I normally would be, because I do understand. The point is to get you doing these things and understanding what it's like to do these things, then maybe less so on putting the huge deadline pressure. But do realize that, that deadline pressure is there. I probably got beat to the wire from that protest by Nathan, because I actually had to go and have dinner with my parents because it was my mother's birthday. So we went out and had a socially semi-distanced birthday with her. But I was working the entire time through the dinner. But I had to drive to London. Normally I would be sitting in my car in Elmer and sending the pictures immediately from my car. So that's the kind of deadline pressure I'm under. And I know that even the Free Press photographer was telling me, the London Free Press photographer was telling me that he was getting, he was having to go take cell phone pictures because he doesn't have the ability to go Wi-Fi to his phone from his main camera. That was $1,000 option that to add on to the 1DXs that he shoots with, and the company didn't want to splurge for that, but they need the pictures right away. So he's got to go take a cell phone picture, even though he's got two camera bodies hanging over each shoulder with thousands of dollars worth of lenses, but he can't do anything about it because they haven't invested in either new cameras that will allow him to send Wi-Fi to the from the camera to the phone, so he can get a tweet out or send it back to the desk so they can tweet it out. Excuse me. So there is that instantaneous pressure. I even imagine that the local paper, the Elmer Express, was having things up relatively quickly, because they had several people there as well. So just a word to the wise that, while I am a little bit less strict on deadlines this year, this semester, do realize that when you hit the real world, minutes matter, not hours or days, or I'm sorry, I couldn't find anything is not cutting it. Even in a pandemic, you have to go find something no matter what it is. So might be a little bit too much of an ask for students, so that's why I've gone to this sort of method. Out of curiosity, are you finding this video a little dark? Okay. I apologize for that. I don't know what's happening particularly with this laptop from the school. The last couple times I've used it, it's been really, really janky with sending the stream. So, but Terry, how many hours until the new MacBooks come out? Like 3 hours? Yeah. Well, I'm hoping for a new 13-inch. I know you like the larger one, but I'm hoping for a new 13-inch MacBook Pro today. So Yeah, you didn't get the cinema displays, did you? The XDR ones, the big. Oh, ooh, snazzy. I have a lamer version of that. I have an iMac usually downstairs, like an old 27-inch iMac as one, and then a janky 23-inch Dell from the, it seems like the early 2000s down there. And, you know, it's not really a great setup. So I'm hoping to get another monitor as well as that new laptop. But yeah, I'm spending money like it's going out of style. So might have to wait a little bit on the monitor. And definitely not the $5,000 or $6,000 Apple version. So it would be nice, but yeah, priorities. That's not bad. Yeah. Yep. It totally, for those of you who don't have that kind of a setup, if you're working with two screens, it is so much easier, especially if you're doing an edit. You can see the thumbnails on the one screen, and then you can have a larger view on the other screen. And it just makes your editing, whether you're using Photo Mechanic or whether even you're using Lightroom to do it, you can find a way to split that up so that you can get a really, high resolution view and sort of know where you are on your set of pictures in thumbnails. So it's really cool to be able to do that. And you don't even have to have two 30-inch or 27-inch, or the one monitor doesn't really have to, like the one with the thumbnails on it doesn't really even have to be color calibrated. It doesn't even have to be a really great monitor. I usually use my smaller one for email and the thumbnails that I'll have up. So I'll have the stuff that isn't color critical on the bad monitor, and then the iMac as the good. So you could buy a $150 monitor or a $100 monitor or whatever it is from some surplus store as your second one. So it's always helpful to have. And if you absolutely need one and don't mind a really terrible old school Dell other form factor one, just ask. And I've got two sitting downstairs that I would love to get rid of. So hopefully next semester when I see you in person, then yeah, I could bring one of those in if anybody is interested, because they just take up space in my basement and I really don't want them. So they're not great monitors, don't get me wrong, but if you want to separate stuff out and have a second one, it would be useful for that. Anyways, back to actual, useful photo stuff rather than my techie babble that I love to engage with. So I'm going to just show you some of the pics and that I shot, and then maybe I can download quickly and show you some of the ones that Mike got. Because not saying, ooh, you don't need that thing on top, do you? Where are we? Take this off. Switcher off. There. Okay. So we'll do this one first, and then I'll go back and do the other one that I did for the globe, because I don't think I got a chance to show you that, because we were off last week, right? So getting in close at this point, I had an N95 mask on, and Mike had a medical, like a surgical mask on. So I sort of this same style. I didn't really have too much of a worry of getting closer to people with the N95 on. I figured if healthcare workers could deal with it, I was not getting ridiculously close. I tried to stay, a meter, not maybe 2 meters away, but Sometimes you'd have to get a little closer to these people, and they're all not wearing masks, and other than this one guy. So it was a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but to get a decent picture, I felt that I sort of had to get in a little closer. If you don't feel that close, start using longer lenses. That's my only suggestion. This is shot with a 24. So that's back probably 1.5 meters, almost 2 meters from them, at 24 as well. So you don't have to get hugely close necessarily, but sometimes the longer lens, that's with the 400, 116 on that one. So you can shoot it something like this with a longer lens, but I find being able to give a mix of wide and telephoto just allows me to tell the story better. Is it a risk? Yeah, definitely. I was more willing to take it. I felt I was fairly protected with the better mask on, and I wasn't staying in one place for very long. So from what I understand, it's prolonged exposure. So it is a little bit more dire. But, you know, a wide range of different focal lengths and different views of this. So there was about 2,000 people is what the cops said. I didn't think there was quite that many. I don't know what your estimate, Mike, was, but I didn't think quite 2,000. Yeah, I wrote 1,000 in my caption, but the cops said 2,000. So I found that a little bit high. But at first, when they were standing around in this area here, I was guessing 500 or 600. But when they started being on the road, I realized that there was probably more than that, because it stretched for a very long time. And I actually had difficulty getting back out of town because they circled back around, and they walked past where my car was, and then I couldn't get out of where I was, so I had to go a different route home. But yeah, it was a pretty long procession of people that walked down, and of course, you know, there was the people that were bugging you for being the media, as Mike and I talked about. It was an interesting group of people in terms of they were anti-media, but they needed media presence to sort of get their cause out. So I just don't quite understand the, you know, trash the media thing. You know, you can have that protest, and if none of us show up, then nobody else other than, you know, the people that were there would know about it. There was supposedly a protest a couple weeks before that, or a week before that, that 300 people showed up to, and the only thing that I ever saw was one picture on social media about it. There might have been a shot in the Elmer paper, but, you know, I was working for Agence France Presse, which, you know, international newswire. There was Canadian Press, which feeds out to AP. There was every TV station around, so CTV, Global, CBC, as well as radio stations, and then the local newspapers, both Free Press and Elmer Express. They got a huge amount of media attention, and, you know, I think personally, I think the point of a protest is to get your word out, whether I agree with them or not. I don't know why you'd hate on the media, because you're trying to make your point, and to make your point, you need public support. And so you're in a bit of a catch-22 as a journalist, saying, okay, well, you know, does this deserve the coverage? I've been to things like this and there have been as many media as there have been protesters, and then you're just like, oh great, now we're making the story out of 20 people. But that was a sizable enough crowd that I think it was worth the media attention that it got. But it was certainly an interesting time. Mike, did you have any thoughts about it that you wanted to share? Yeah, a long list of grievances. The one that I sort of saw the end of was a guy hosed down the crowd from his front lawn, and I was taking this shot at that time, and if I jump over to my set of raw images here, it's near the end. I shot 1,878 pictures. So, yeah, there was a few. Where is it? Somewhere in this range here. Yeah, right around here. So I was off shooting. This is all really dark, but somewhere in this range. I don't know why my capture time is a little wonky, but somewhere in here, there was a, oh yes, I was shooting this set, and because these cameras are a little bit off. So I was shooting this set of pictures here, and they walked down the street, and I know this is probably going really fast and kind of jerky for you guys. So I'm shooting this, and then all of a sudden you see the guy on the top of the truck, his head's swiveled. If I go back a few frames, he's still swiveled. Oh, yeah. But here it's not. So this is 354, 54 by 58. Something's happening. I don't quite notice yet because I'm concentrating on this little kid, which I shoot for a few more seconds. And then this cop car goes blazing by me again, and the people, the cops jump out and start running, and that's when I knew something was going on. But you can see that they're, I'm shooting this with a 400 from 50 meters up the road, so it's not that I'm getting great pictures of it, and it's now totally underexposed because I was exposing for the highlights rather than because they were in the highlights at this point. So sometimes it's good to shoot in aperture priority just for that kind of a situation. I usually don't shoot in shutter priority. I guess you can shoot in auto ISO and set it to manual as well. That would prevent this from happening. But then the camera's doing whatever it wants. And I'm not always wanting it to do what it thinks it should do. I'd rather have the control, but then again, sometimes you just get totally hooped by it. The other thing I found, and I don't know if Mike found this as well, that my settings kept getting switched every time I put the camera down, and it would rub against my my leg as I'm walking along. I find it. I pick up the camera, and something was changed. At one point in time, it turned into manual focus on me, and I was wondering what the heck is going on. Why is this camera not focusing? And another time, like almost every time I picked it up, the focusing point was down in the bottom corner or the top corner of the frame. So, I don't know if you had a step counter on, Mike, but it looked like I walked about 6 kilometers doing this. So over that period of time, a bunch of stuff was happening to the camera, and I took a lot of pictures of the ground, obviously. So it was a bit of an interesting setup, and there was interesting guys. I didn't end up sending this picture just because he's just a little too creepy looking in this frame, and he's kind of looking at the camera. I wanted to because of the mask, but anyways, found that a little weird. So as you can see, I shot probably way too much. And that's sort of a bit of an issue when you're doing this on deadline, because it took me until driving from Aylmer to St. Thomas, the far side of St. Thomas, before it was done ingesting all my pictures. It was like 95 gigs of pictures that it was. So that took a while, and while this laptop is a little bit slower, that's still, and I'm shooting with the A7R4, which has a 61 meg file. That's, it's still a long time to have all that download, which isn't ideal. But I shot a lot of bad stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. And I'm sure, Mike, looking back at your stuff, you probably were like, oh my God, why did I bother taking this picture or that picture or the other picture? Yeah. As you can see, how many did I send? I sent 16 pictures out of 1,800. So odds are not, I'm no Cartier-Bresson, who we're going to be talking about later today with the decisive moment. As I've been made fun of, I was made fun of early in my career. I do the decisive burst, or the not decisive burst in many cases. So yeah, that was that protest. It was interesting. I don't think I shot it overly well, personally. I was kind of having trouble figuring how I can shoot this group of people and show its size. The only ones that really show the size, I would say, are this and maybe that one, size of the group. Even something like that doesn't really show how many people are there. So it's tough. You've got to walk a long way, as I said, and finding a picture in your edit is somewhat challenging as well. Anybody have any questions or thoughts? No? Okay. The other thing that I did recently was this company, Eve Cannabis, is run by a bunch of women, and they market cannabis products for women. So I got sent to their greenhouses and stuff in their facility in Strathroy to take pictures of the staff as well as some of the processes. So they make bath bombs with THC in them. I'm not so sure how that gets absorbed into you, but I would think that that's a fairly high concentration of THC if it has to come through the skin. But what do I know? Oh, there it is, 98 milligrams of THC and 98 of CBD. So I didn't really know what they were wanting. This was for the Globe and Mail. And I didn't really understand everything that they wanted. They gave me about 3 sentences on, what was going on, and I had to figure out from that what to shoot. They said that they wanted to have the women prominent, so because it's a company run by women for women. And so that was really important to them. The other thing is there's a lot of Health Canada protocols, so really she should be wearing this whole getup while she's there, but it's just not going to make a picture if she does that. So I tried to get her in a little bit of a gap so that she felt that she wasn't going to be touching the plants, because you don't want to contaminate and all that kind of stuff. And then when they were together, I made sure they were wearing masks and stuff, because at this point in time, you know, even if they don't always wear masks because they're in such, I mean, these two are married, so obviously they don't have to wear masks when around each other. And I would imagine this is sort of the top leadership, so they may have gotten to the point that that's their social circle. But realistically, you know, you can't really send a picture now because they would just be absolutely killed in but in the comment section if people weren't wearing masks. So just got to be mindful of that. You don't want to have the main, you know, portrait with mask on, but you do want to make sure that when they're around other people that you're showing them doing the right thing, because either they will be criticized or you will be, and nobody wants that. So it was kind of interesting, you know, trying to shoot this all garbed up, so I looked pretty much like what they're looking like he's looking like while I was shooting. And so this is for more of a feature story. So she's not making one for production. She's just showing me how it's done, and I'm photographing it. The only thing that would be different is that they don't have one of the essential oils that they are needing to make the next batch. So they were actually waiting on it, but they didn't know how long it was going to be. So I didn't have a problem with her making one just for me to photograph her doing that, because, you know, their time is at a premium, so's mine, and I'm not showing anything that isn't going to happen. Plus, my presence there as part of a feature story is going to be like they're putting their own face on things anyways. So you know that it's a bit of a setup. It's not a pure photojournalistic you know, behind the scenes, oh, this is, you know, we were just there and this is how they do things. No, PR people were there and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't a true event anyways. But so I wanted to make sure that, you know, I got the female leadership being shown, as well as some product and then a portrait, because I really didn't know what they wanted, to be honest. And then if I go to my Safari and type my name in, there it is on the Globe's website. So they decided to use that one. And then the portrait, product shot. So essentially one of each of the three kind of pictures that I sent. So not knowing what they were expecting and just sort of covering all my bases that I could, I think it worked out fairly well that way. most of the time you're going to want to get a better idea. But I work for the Globe fairly regularly, so I have a fairly good sense. But if you don't, if you're working for a magazine or a newspaper for the first couple times, just make sure that you get it clear as to what they're looking for, because you don't want to have the problem that their expectation of you has not been communicated, and then they hold you responsible for it, which seems kind of weird, but it does certainly happen quite regularly. So, yeah, that's just something to think about when you're getting out there and trying to market yourself. If you want to start doing some of the editorial stuff, even if it's editorial for a certain genre of magazine. So if you happen to do puppies, or you're a dog photographer, that's your thing, and then now you want to shoot for one of the dog magazines. I mean, or I don't know, Canadian pet owner or something. I don't know whether there is such a thing, but anyhow, you've got to make sure that you know their style and that sort of thing, or else they won't call you back. I did a job once for, who was it? Women's World, I think it was, and they specifically said, don't let the subject wear bright colors. And I got there, and that's all she had with her. And I was like, okay, well, maybe you should have been telling her that, because she's not going to go home now. We met at a park somewhere, and she's not going to go home and change, because she lives 20 minutes away from here, or 40 minutes out. I'm just going to sit here and do this and wait for her to go back and change and find something else. She came in bright orange. So, but I never got called back after that from that group. Whether they had anything for me to do or not, I don't know. But I did the exact opposite of what they asked me to do, essentially. Even though the pictures turned out okay in terms of content, I'm sure they didn't like them in terms of the outfit or the style. So I'll never know. Never know if they were really unhappy or not. Okay, so I've yammered on quite a long time about that, but I thought that bringing in those real world kind of examples that we're doing is that I'm doing in real time is fairly helpful. Okay, so let's just take a quick look here. I'm going to switch over again to there and there, and we're going to see where we are at this point. Okay, so that's this week here. Oh, yeah, I made 2 copies of it. So we're on week 9 here. So today we're going to be doing this PowerPoint about the decisive moment. But Cindy tells me that you guys already did something in another course on the decisive moment. Was that last year, or was that this semester as well? Right. The online course with Heather, was it? Cartier-Bresson. Yeah. Okay. So this will be a bit of a review, and I won't spend a heap of time on it. And that probably means you'll be out of here a little bit sooner than you would have been, because I'm not so sure whether Evan's taken that course or not. So I will make sure that I give you enough information, but maybe not the granular detail of everything of Cartier-Bresson's life that I sometimes have gone into in past years. So your next assignment is going to be about getting the decisive moment. And I thought I changed that. So I believe this is due November 16th, not October 16th. Let's just change that right now. I thought I hit save when I did that. It's due November 16th, which is only a week from today. And normally I want you to be going out and finding an event and trying to get the decisive moment from that event. Right now, the decisive moment can mean, you know, your dog snatching a ball out of the air. It can mean a lot of other things that I normally would never accept, because there's not a whole lot of sports going on, and there's not a whole lot of events that will have a decisive moment. Now, if, you know, Mike and I had happened to bid in there for the guys getting sprayed, that would have been the decisive moment. Maybe from that event, some guy getting, you know, sprayed in the face with a garden hose. You know, is it really the decisive moment in the entire protest? Well, maybe not, but it's a decisive moment of it. So that's what I'm going to be looking for that. We'll just go over the history of the decisive moment here, and yeah, so that's your assignment number 5, and then you'll have assignment number 6, which is was TBD, and I would like it to be an environmental portrait, I think, if that's at all possible. So we'll talk about that more next week, but I think that's probably what I'm going to have you guys do, because that's probably the most technically or most feasible in terms of you know, time and energy and safety as well. So let's just switch over. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments or questions before we get started into our nice little PowerPoint here? You? Okay. It's not week 6. Okay, so you've probably seen this. Let me just switch that over to the other side. Is that going to work better? Yep, there we go. So you've probably seen this quote before by Cartier-Bresson. All of the means of expression, photography is the only one that fixes a precise moment in time. You can describe a moment in writing, you can paint about a moment, but it's never actually that instant. It's your mind's eye of the instant, it's what you perceive of the instant, but in photography, it is the instant. Getting that very fraction of a second that something happens, whether that's, you know, earth-shattering moment, or whether that is just a really beautiful form of a person, or expression, or something like that. It's the only medium that really can capture that. In video, it'll be fleeting. In everything else, it'll be your mind's eye version of it. So Cartier-Bresson is one of the masters of early photojournalism, as you all know. He's renowned for his photos that just sort of have that one piece of interest that if it wasn't there, then the picture would be just sort of mundane. But because of that timing or the placement or all of the above, the picture becomes something completely different and becomes really interesting and I don't know. Let me just leave it at interesting. The picture we have on the screen here, arguably without the person on the bridge, it would be just kind of like, that's not a bad shot, right? But just because that woman, I think it's a woman, going across the bridge, it's pretty small on my screen, so I can't even tell. Let me just see here. I've got a bigger monitor over here. I've hooked into my TV. Yeah, the woman going across the bridge there. If she was over on the left-hand side, I don't know. I think it would kind of put too much weight over here, and whatever this dot in the sky is here, I'm assuming that's the sun, or that's my assumption. It would probably put too much weight and she would stand out too much, but since she's right here, she's almost to the tree, but she's not to the tree. If she was in the tree, it would be different. I don't know. There's sort of that lean from the bow of the boat there, pushing to that side. There's just something about it that if you placed the elements in different places just slightly, it just wouldn't work. Similarly here, I mean, I'm sure you could probably find this one, that train probably wasn't going all that fast. So slightly different moments, a little bit left, a little bit right, probably would have done this justice as well, but it's still composition, it's timing, it's the elements, the actual elements of the image. And I think there's also a power in black and white in these. There's a simplicity to it. There's a lot more graphical nature to the images than if they were in color. Not to say that you can't do that in color, but it has to be done differently and it has to be a different thought process. Because the color just adds so much more information that even if there is a decisive moment, it may not stand out the same way as it does in just the sheer black and white of it. There might be just too much complication to it. Similarly, I mean, the framing of these, the placement, this is not your technical rule of thirds. But if you crop this or you position this in a way that it is rule of thirds, I'm not so sure if the picture has the same sort of feel and just that very moment, the rusticness of the street with the crack in the wall. If you were to put this rule of thirds, you'd be cropping that out. You'd also miss the shadow here on the wall. There's a lot of parts of this that you don't really know how to explain always, and everybody sees it just a little differently. But en masse, people find, oh, well, that happens to be like the moment. Because if you imagine things being somewhere other way, it just wouldn't have that same interest or magic. Maybe it's because that they're right underneath this point here. But maybe that would have felt okay if they were just under this piece here. I don't know. Here definitely is a decisive moment. Anywhere else, with the exception of like a half a meter, a couple inches this way more, and this really wouldn't have worked. You've got the different curves, both of the road and the railings. And if the person was down lower or up higher, again, it probably wouldn't have worked out just as well. But it's just that one moment, and slow shutter speed combined with sharpness of the buildings and fixtures around also helps. But you not only have to have composition, but you have to have timing with photographs. And there has to be something in there that means something to someone. And if you can time it in a way that it's aesthetically pleasing, as well as having that great moment. I mean, even without this person, that's not a bad picture. But with the person in it is exponentially greater. This one here I really find fascinating. I like this picture, don't get me wrong, but this one I find fascinating. Just the placement of this person here and this person up here. If they were anywhere else in the frame, maybe this guy could be, a meter ahead, another stride ahead, so that he was between these two trees. But it's this person down here that just immediately draws your eye, because everything is sort of the same, right? You've got the lines of trees, and then you've just got this figure of a human that is perfectly between the tree here and the set of trees here. So, and with the next picture, again, perfectly timed to between this group of people and this group of people. You've got that opening, that gap, and the person is mid-stride. For those of you who are in the commercial class, it was the same issue I was having with Madison when we had her running at the beginning of the semester. Wouldn't necessarily have her in exactly the right spot when you wanted her. And we were doing that on purpose, right? But to be able to get this and not direct her to be walking at a very slow pace between these people and have that stride just so that her toe isn't really clipped off, her heel isn't really clipped off, it just happens to be just precisely there. Is it luck? No, it's not completely luck. It is somewhat. I mean, you just have to sort of study people, and you'll know whether something's going to happen or not, and where to place yourself. But there is that element of luck, but there is that element of, I know exactly when to press that shutter button. Maybe that's lost in my decisive burst of 20 frames per second with the silent shutter, and but I need 20 frames with a kick-ass digital camera, and he needs one shot of film to do it. So sort of shows you our difference in skill level or aesthetic level. Again, moments as well as composition. The moment that they're just busting out from work, the placement of this person in that stair, or in that roadway, cobblestone, or set of steps, she's anywhere else, it's, you know, a moment further, you cut her off. A moment prior, she might not be turning the corner so that she's in that pose. So, and not only that, you've got, you know, the graphic nature of the scene as it is already. It's a beautiful picture as it is, never mind her, but that just makes it so much better. And sometimes in street photography, you just, you know, you need to be there and aware to get that decisive moment. So the case study of a decisive moment. Let me just see if I can turn that on. And hopefully. So the shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald, I'm sure several of you can tell me who that was. But he's the guy that shot JFK. Probably only, well, I don't think any of us were actually born at that point in time. So he was murdered by Jack Ruby. I believe it was the day after. Are you guys hearing this? I'm sorry, I can't hear the output from this through my setup. So were you hearing that as well? No. Oh, okay. Let me just switch it up here. Just give me 1 second, because I have probably got it set so that it's not outputting. No, there we go. So that's got to go from there. And let's try that now.
Lee Harvey Oswald, 24, is arrested in this theater with a pistol and taken to this building, the Dallas police station. His rifle is found hidden near the assassin's window. 2 days later, as Oswald is escorted to a car in the basement, a gunman jumps out of the crowd of reporters.
He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot.
The gunman is Jack Ruby, 52, a nightclub owner.
Okay, so that was the sequence of Lee Harvey Oswald being killed. And there was several photographers that were there because he was being paraded in front of the press. And several of them got pictures of it, but one was the decisive moment and one was not. And there's some, there's a good link to the story from the Dallas Morning News about it, because of course it happened in Dallas. So there were two newspaper photographers, Bob Jackson and Jack Beers, and they shot 0.6 of a second apart. Both are really, really great images, but one is an iconic image, and the other one is not. So Jack Beers, this is his shot. The lunge forward of Jack Ruby towards Harvey Oswald, but he hasn't fired the shot yet. At least I don't believe he has. But in Bob Jackson's version of it, he is already shot. 0.6 of a second later, there's the reaction of the police officer, I assume, as well as Oswald of being shot. But between this picture here which, you know, if you got that picture and there was no other picture, wow, you know, that's the picture, right? That's the moment before, the last moment before Oswald was shot. There was only 6/10 of a second, we know now, less than 6/10 of a second later before he was actually shot. So it's a great moment. But when the other guy is just a little bit slow off the mark, and while he sees the motion of Jack Ruby, he hesitates just that tiny little bit. In 6/10 of a second, he gets this picture, which I'm sure almost everyone has seen. There was a third picture from UPI, and, you know, all of these people are obviously shooting on film cameras that you have to click and then advance. Probably none with a motor drive at all. I think they were available, but, you know, you'd maybe get 3 frames per second, if that, out of them. And, you know, it was highly unlikely that anybody would actually have one. They were very rare. So it was usually a one shot, boom, that's it. Then you got to cock the camera again. So from this shot, it really doesn't show anything. You know, it doesn't show the moment other than, you know, Oswald coming out and being led by the 2 officers. But this one, at least it shows, you know, the act that's about to happen. But it's still, both are paled in comparison to this photo here by Bob Jackson, which has become certainly iconic. The one obviously was judged better and won the Pulitzer, and the other one was sort of forgotten, and it could have been a decisive moment, right? It really, there's hardly any other time in that, you know, whole walk that they were doing that would have been more poignant, but the 6/10 of a second mattered at that point. It's kind of weird that the guy that reacted quicker to the movement is the guy that didn't get the picture, the decisive moment. But nowadays, if the same exact thing were to happen, then the guy that reacted quicker would be on his 4th or 5th or 12th frame by the time the next shot happened, and would have gotten that entire sequence. Whereas and there could have been a better moment within that stretch of time. But when it was just a one-shot kind of deal, you know, that the guy that actually reacted slower won the day, and got the better picture. And the one thing about photojournalism is that there is that competition, that you're up against somebody else. Of course, you know, even from the weekend, I looked at my colleague Nathan Dennett from CP's pictures from, you know, to see what he got, to see if he'd beat me. There's that competitive side to photojournalism. And, you know, normally the guy who reacts quicker does better, but in this particular case, it actually was worse for the guy who actually did. It doesn't seem fair, you know, but Beers felt that he had failed, and it sort of stayed with him until he eventually died. he was there. He was prepared. He just didn't get the moment. And if the other guy hadn't shot slightly after him, his would have been the picture that everybody would have known. But it was just the fact that there was somebody else there and they were able to get that better moment. And was there anything he could have done differently? No. Really, how are you going to say, oh, I'm just going to wait to see what this guy with a gun does who's jumping out of a crowd? You're not going to wait. You're going to hit the button as soon as you know and process what is happening. And even maybe if you don't, you just see a commotion and you start shooting. Certainly, that's the way I do some sports photography, is that you see something coming into the edge of the frame and boom, 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 you just start shooting. Because likely whatever's coming out of the edge of the frame is going to hit whatever you're tracking. And I'm sure that was the same sort of mentality that these guys had. Was, I see something happening, I haven't fully processed it in my brain yet, but here we go. I just got to hit that shutter button. So, two pictures, both really actually very successful pictures. In isolation, each one of them is absolutely better. But when you have to compare them, one is always going to be better. The only time that that's not the case is if you have the exact same moment from two people standing exactly side by side, which happens. But it's not always... that's very rare. Usually you can pick one which is better. The strange thing is, Dave Chidley made this whole set up. This whole set of slides up probably 6 or 7 years ago. And then he had the same sort of thing happen to him. Dave used to teach at the college, obviously, for those of you who don't know him. And he photographed so here's his website here. He photographed, this is his old website, I don't think he uses it anymore, a guy kicking, there it is. He had kicked a brother of Dudley George's, who was the protester who was killed in Ipperwash back in the 90s, 1995, was protesting again in 2015, and he kicked a gas can into a fire at the protest. And this is the picture that Dave shot. Oh, sorry, this is the picture that Craig Glover shot, who's working for the London Free Press. Let me just see here. I'm going to copy the same. Pierre George, and then Pierre George and Dave Chidley. And that was probably Craig's. There we go. Dave's, of course. Where is it? Guess I just didn't scroll down. Dave's is that picture. So, there's Craig's version. There's Dave's version. One of them wins a national newspaper award. The other one wins a news, the NPAC Awards, which is the National News Photographers Association of Canada. So they're almost exactly the same moment within fractions of a second of each other. And one will win one contest and one will win the other. Honestly, I'm not so sure which I think are better. He ended up being okay. He had very minor burns to him. I know this is a very disturbing kind of image, but Pierre George ended up being fine. But between this picture and this picture, you know, there's almost no difference. You see a little bit of more flame on his head and on his cheek there than you do in Craig's version. But one was judged to be better in one circumstance, and one was judged to be better by a different set of judges. So it can be subjective, but both men were there and captured the decisive moment. I don't know which one is more decisive. It's arguable, but you know, it's kind of strange that at the time that Dave created this set of slides about Lee Harvey Oswald, that, you know, he would be having the same sort of circumstance almost. Obviously, nobody was killed. He ended up being fine. But, or I shouldn't say fine. He lived and was not severely hurt, I should say. If I, okay. Yeah, so this one as well. So that's them putting out the flames on him. And there he is as well, on fire. And you can see the people reacting there in the background. But so obviously this is the decisive moment as compared to this one or this one. Are they important in telling the story? Yeah, sure. That certainly is the decisive moment. And, you know, Craig's is a little bit wider, Dave's a little bit tighter. I don't recall whether he's actually cropped this picture or not. Obviously he has from the sides, which Craig did not on this one, because that's not the aspect ratio that you normally have. Let me see, if I click on it, does it come up? No, it's the crop version. But so the two different moments, or two different versions of the same thing, and you know, two national award winners in two different competitions. This is also a good example of the dangers and the differences in people. Dave has not had any lasting effects from shooting this. Craig quit being a photojournalist because of the PTSD that he was experiencing because of that. Is it because Dave is a stronger person or anything like that? No, not at all. Craig is a wonderful person, and you know, I thought I actually saw him at the protest on the weekend, but I did not. Somebody who looked very similar to him, but he was affected more of it by it than Dave was, and maybe because Craig is 20 years younger than Dave, and he hadn't seen the things that Dave had seen throughout his career that allowed Dave to process that in a different way. Or it can just be personality. There's no way to know. But Craig is no longer a photojournalist, even though he was fabulous. He was absolutely awesome photojournalist. But he doesn't do it anymore. I don't even think he takes pictures anymore, to be honest. And Dave has sort of retired, but that's just because he wants to be with his grandkids, and I guess he's semi-retired. So two lessons from this. One, you know, the decisive moment can be as cut and dried as we saw with the two pictures from Lee Harvey Oswald, or of Lee Harvey Oswald being killed by Jack Ruby. Or they can be as close together as possible. Both Dave and Craig had modern digital cameras in 2015. There's more of a chance that both of them were going to get the moment in focus and at almost the same time. Motor drives work fabulously that way. But, the ability to react instantly or to know something is coming, it's better if you know something is coming, but if you're able to react, whether it's a slight bit slower or just that much faster, that will really depend on the photo you get. So it's a really interesting part of the job in terms of there's that sense of competition which you won't get as a wedding photographer or a nature photographer or pretty much any other version of photography other than photojournalism, because there's just not that instantaneous competition. You don't have somebody else shooting the wedding against you. You're hired and you're it. If Uncle Bob steps in front of you, that's the problem of the bride and groom. But, let's just see here. What else I got? So continuing on with the decisive moment, we're always trying to, constantly striving to get that moment, that unique body language or expression or action, reaction, whatever it happens to be. But it still has to have those aesthetic components, the supporting that action and the dynamic content. So there may be some sort of, action or whatever it is, but there also has to be that original composition to lend as well. I mean, you might have the greatest moment in the world, but if you've got it framed up and it looks terrible to begin with, it's probably not going to do you any good. So another picture by Dave there. You've got the moment that Rodney Stafford finds out that his daughter has been found dead. And that's, I believe, Rodney's mother. Dave was with the family at that point because he got really close to them in the time that they were searching for Tori. And he happened to be there when he found out. So something a little bit less heavy. The moment that Harper reaches out to grasp at the confetti at the end of after he won in 2008. Obviously in YMCA there are lots of Ys, so you get a lot of chances at this one. But just to make sure that everything kind of lines up and you're in the right spot, that's sort of the decisive moment. The moment that hands are about to touch, to come across. This is the people fleeing from the US to Canada. Or the decisive moment that the sign goes through a fried chicken sandwich shop's window. The moment after this girl gets nipped at by the goat and her eyes cross. Any other moment before or after is just not going to be the same. It can be as simple as Donald Trump waving. Maybe that was a premonition. He was waving goodbye. Hey. Um, yeah, well, at that point in time, we still had a little bit of time left with him. Anyways, you know, this was kind of set up by George Clooney. He did this on purpose, but you've got to get the moment where he's screaming. And this is the former finance minister, Jim Flaherty, when he breaks the igloo, when he's trying to get out. And another shot by Dave of Conrad Black flipping off the media as he enters the courtroom in Chicago, I believe it was, of which nobody else got. And Dave's lucky that his flash didn't, you know, wasn't over another few inches, such that he got the bad reflection there and it would have covered up the hand. But yeah. So most of the time, there's a decisive moment at sports. There's a lot of wow factor in lots of dynamic motion. There's also the moments of joy and defeat at a sporting event. So it's realistically, you know, at a higher end competition, you're going to get that. It's part of the reason that we're going to be a little bit more lax on the definition of a decisive moment for you guys, because there's not this ability to get that. Whether it's the puck stuck in Belfour's mask or Crosby flying through the air, Melissa throwing up her hands. I've forgotten these guys' names, I'm sorry. Guy getting stepped on in steeple and screaming out. Jen just making it over top of the bar. And I've forgotten this guy's name too. It's terrible. And this guy's. He's dropping the ball. This guy's about to get into the end zone. This guy's just dropping the ball. These two guys, who I don't think I ever knew their names, were flying through the midair. The ball crushing on top of his head, or just about to crush onto her head. Now, would have been better if I'd had it exactly the same as this? Probably. Yep, that would have been a more decisive moment. But still, you know, she's over her back and, whoa, sorry. This was sort of the decisive pose from this particular skate, or the moment that they scored well. A moment in the air that was fleeting. And one of my first published photos of a rugby takedown. Just the moment before he hits the ground, but after he's been hit, obviously he's feeling it. So getting back, there's your assignment. Just the brief outline of it. You're going to be looking for the perfect moment, if there is such a thing. You're going to capture a moment that stops the action or expression, is frozen in time. You're going to have that design and compositions and all that good photography stuff behind it as it is. Just the good composition, the good, you know, framing, the good colors, the good whatever it is, or lack of colors for that matter. If you want to do it in black and white, that's totally fine with me. So you've got to have all that as well as having the moment. And it's got to be something that is interesting, and it's got to be something that didn't happen a moment before and didn't happen a moment later. Well, maybe it did. It could be, but this has to be as close to the best as you can imagine it. So your assignment is going to be due the 16th of November. There is one photograph that you have to hand in, which obviously is the decisive moment. So if you handed me in 2, you've kind of missed the point of the assignment. Because then there's not a decisive moment, is there? There's an indecision in your edit of the decisive moment. Cartier-Bresson said your first 10,000 photographs are your worst. He was shooting it one frame at a time, so multiply that number by however many frames per second your motor drive does, and then you get that number. So I'm at 200,000. No. Yeah, about 200,000. Which is not true, because, you know, maybe it is. So some students' assignments of the decisive moment. I don't know whether I'd call this completely decisive. Maybe the moment that they foot left the ground. There we go, there we go. That's a lot more decisive. Bubble in midair, about to be popped by kid. Dude hanging from the pole in a subway car. Is that what I see? Yeah. Interesting. The moment that Yeah, I haven't ever ridden a subway in New York City because I'd never gone with the group. And the last time I was there, I think I was 17. So yeah, it's been a while. Cool. Well, you know, you can always go 2 years from now, 3 years, 5 years from now when we don't have a pandemic. I'm kidding. Hopefully it'll be next year. Next fall that things will be back to normal. At least according to Pfizer that might happen. If their vaccine is nice enough. This is definitely a decisive moment. Ball just about to go into a hoop. Ah, isn't that sweet? I'm not so sure what's happening here, but she seems upset. There we go, another street dancer. Definitely the decisive moment. The fact that they're floating in midair. I don't really like the crop personally, but the fact that they're floating in midair above the crowd. Oh, I'm looking at the time now and realizing we just missed. It's an hour past Remembrance Day. Wow. I apologize for not stopping, folks. Yeah. Is it tomorrow? Okay. Right. Okay. I did read that, but I'm totally off with my days. Obviously. It's the 10th today, obviously then. Thank you, I appreciate that. I had thought about it this first thing this morning too, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna do that. Shows you how my brain is working these days. Anyways, back to the more decisive moments. Again, nice bubble shot. That's a pretty cool shot. The kiss. This is definitely the decisive moment. Before she tries to intercept the stream of water, definitely. Yeah, I could say that is a decisive moment. The next one's kind of crappy, though. Oh, sorry, was that a bad pun? Yeah, definitely a decisive moment, kind of leaving you hanging there. Definitely a bad pun. I'm good at bad puns. I'm bad at good puns. No, I'm not good. Anyways, we'll leave that. Just a reminder, your term project is coming up due at the end of the semester. And you should be probably following somebody or have started to or have followed somebody or have done something about this by now. I know some of you have, and that's great. If not, really start going heavy into your thought on it, because it's going to come up at you fast, and getting it done in time, especially in these circumstances, is challenging. So yeah, don't leave that to the last moment. If you get stuck, keep it simple. Biting off more than you can chew is a huge problem with this kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a long, huge, years in the making photo essay. While those are beautiful and gripping and awesome to look at, yeah, it's not in the scope of this course, obviously. So make sure you simplify it down to what you need, and keep it simple, and just be able to make sure you tell a coherent story. And most of you have shared with me what you're going to do on it. If you haven't, drop me a note and let me know as soon as you can. Yeah, so that is that. Any other thoughts, concerns, questions, anything at all about what we talked about today in terms of Cartier-Bresson or upcoming assignments or that sort of thing? Nobody? Y'all just really hungry? Hey, totally understandable. Not exactly what you want to think of when you're gonna have a drink. Somebody spitting into your mouth? Yeah, no. Not my idea of good, but hey, you know, to each their own, I guess. You can either not wear a mask, or you can have somebody spit in your mouth. So, from a water fountain. Anyhow, anything else? Anybody else got any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Anything they want to talk about? No? Okay. Well, thanks for putting up with me again this week. Hope you all have hope all of you who, essentially Evan, who isn't coming to my next class, I hope you have a good week. And everybody else, I will see you in an hour and a half when I finish getting my kitchen cleaned up after I make mess and make myself some lunch. So, yeah. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.